The external and internal oppression of language shaming. Part 1. The external oppression of language shaming. Chicanos Chicanas tend to think of language shaming as a xenophobic practice of criticizing, harassing, and even assaulting an individual for speaking their native tongue. More often than not, it is Chicanos and Chicanas, Latinos and Latinas, and Latino and Latina immigrants that are being harassed for speaking Spanish in America. We have all seen the racism on display on social media with people harassing our gente for speaking Spanish in public places, telling them to go back to Mexico or to go back to wherever they came from. Oddly, many of them are U.S. citizens. These assaults are the result of the United States' long history of vilifying immigrants and dehumanizing them with terms like illegals and aliens. During Trump's election campaign, he ran off of the racism and nativism in America and promised to build a border wall that Mexico would have to pay for. This helped him win the 2016 election. Trump vilified immigrants, calling them rapists, murderers, and drug dealers. During Trump's term, immigrant families were separated, children were caged, and ICE raided homes and businesses. This emboldened his supporters, and there was an increase in the harassment and assaults on Chicanos Chicanas, Latinos Latinas, and Latino and Latina immigrants, mostly for speaking Spanish. This form of language shaming is steeped in racism. I have yet to see a Scandinavian or Eastern European immigrant being harassed for speaking German or Swedish. Part 2. Internal oppression of language shaming. Within the Chicano-Chicana culture, not being Spanish proficient is also used to shame and criticize. Chicano Spanish is considered by the purist and most Latinos deficient and a mutilation of Spanish. Chicanos and Chicanas are sometimes called pocho, a pejorative used to describe Chicanos and Chicanas that lack Spanish fluency. This insult can come from your abuelita, tios and tias, and your primos and primas. White America is telling us to go home because we are Mexican, and when we go to Mexico to visit family in El Rancho, they let us know we are not Mexican enough. When speaking Spanish to Latinos and Latinas, we feel uncomfortable because we are afraid they will think we are agringados. This creates an insecurity in our Chicano-Chicana identity. Chicanos and Chicanas who grew up speaking Chicano and Chicana Spanish have an internalized belief that we speak poor Spanish, which makes us less Chicano or Chicana. Our forced alienation gives us a psychological conflict because of our dual identity. Chicanos and Chicanas don't fully identify with Anglo-American culture, and we don't fully identify with the Mexican culture as well. Because of this, Chicanos and Chicanas also oppress one another, trying to out-Chicano one another in order to be considered real Chicanos. Our insecurities force us to roll our R's a little more, and suddenly our accents become thicker, shaming those that may not have any familiarity speaking Spanish, thus increasing our position on how Chicano are you rankings. So what does this all mean? Chicanos and Chicanas have a varied degree of Mexicanness and Anglo-ness. There is not one specified level of Spanish proficiency that makes us Chicanos or Chicanas, just like there is not one Chicano-Chicana experience. Because of that, we need to understand that the insecurity we feel due to our Spanish fluency is not something that has to do with our inadequacies. In her book, Borderlands, La Frontera, Gloria Anzaldúa mentions that, on one side of us, we are constantly exposed to the Spanish of the Mexicans. On the other side, we hear the Anglos' incessant clamoring so that we forget our language. As Chicanos and Chicanas, we need to also consider that Spanish was outlawed in America. Chicanos and Chicanas speaking Spanish in schools were humiliated and physically assaulted as punishment for using their native tongue. That practice still continues today, with schools excluding English language learners from their lessons plans, curriculum, and their school's educational pedagogy. Currently, some school districts are even trying to eliminate bilingual education. The suppression and assault on our language is one of the major atrocities the U.S. has committed in maintaining the Anglo-ness of America.